Hey there, this is Colin, pastor of Newton Fellowship, with some time on my hands here self isolating. So, welcome to my office, which happens to be a place where we put clothes, where there's kids' books and all sorts of things. And I guess it's not just my office, it's a general room in the house that I'm using right now. A quick update about my life. When Wendy and I, we've been we've been tested. We still haven't received our results. We thought we should receive them by today. We're still called to self isolate until we get our results. And I'm one of my little worries in life is that they might have forgotten us or lost our results or can't put it all together. And here's the reason why. My last name with the last name of Vanderkur, VAN space DER space KUUR, has caused me grief before. Um, I'll go to an airport. It's like, hey, I'm here for a plane. Here's my passport. Here's this, and they'll say, we don't have you on record. It's like, yes, I got a flight here. See, it's booked. It's in my. Here's my ticket. Here's my receipt. All sorts of things. Sorry, we can't find it. And then you go through all the different files. Can I look for it? Look up, and then we find it under Kerr, KUUR, or maybe my middle name, Stewart, or whichever. Just in the computer age, Van space, Der space, Kerr, computers don't know how to handle it. I hope we get our results soon. In the meantime, we have time on our hands. And one thing I thought I'd do, I think the message of being ready in this world from Matthew chapter 24, being ready for Christ's return, being ready in the midst of a crazy world, as a follower of Christ, resonates to us. And there's after Jesus tells us we need to be a people who are ready, he gives us four parables or illustrations of what that looks like. So over the next few days, I want to just share each of one of these parables and just share a couple of quick reflections on each one of them. And as we read the parables, the major questions are this: what does it mean to be ready? Number two, am I ready? Am I that type of person? What does it mean to me? Then number three, and I'm going to answer this question in 4 days, but I want you to wrestle through it as you think about it. What does what do these parables say about saving faith? About faith? Because I'll just leave it at that, and we'll get to that in a few days. But I want you to just think through there. So here we are in Matthew chapter 24. I'm going to read verse 45. Who then is the faithful and wise servant whom the master has put in charge of the servants in his household to give them their food at the proper time? It will be good for that servant whose master finds him doing so when he returns. I tell you the truth, he will put him in charge of all of his possessions. But suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, my master is staying away a long time. And he then begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And that's Matthew chapter 24, verses 45 to 51. Now, whenever we look at parables, you first have to interpret it as to who are the main characters. And the first character is the master who's going on this journey and's gone for quite a while. And this is talking about Jesus. Jesus is saying we need to be ready because he's going and he's going to return. And so this master is the representative of Jesus in this parable. And then there's the servant, and there's a good servant and a bad servant who's being evaluated by the master, by Jesus. And so based on Matthew 24, Jesus is going, he's going to come back, he's inviting us to be ready, and we're his servants. So what do we learn about being ready from this text? Number one, I love verse 45, which said, who is the faithful and wise servant whom the master has put in charge of his servant's household to give them their food at the appropriate time? Jesus is using this expression broadly. And so this isn't just the elite Christians. These are for all of his followers. And his invitation is, I am calling you a wise servant. I'm calling you a faithful servant even now. So Jesus sees a great potential in your life to care for and lead others who he loves. So Jesus says, who is the faithful and the wise servant who's going to be placed over the household of Jesus to give others food or spiritual nourishment? Jesus is saying, it's you. Now, some of us have larger households or part of the household of God, and some of us have very small. That's not the point. The point is when Jesus invites us into his family, he gives us responsibility. He gives us mission. You're here. I love you. I'm changing your life. Follow me. I'm going to make you fishers of men. Go into all the world and make disciples. If you're following me, you're going to be one who has influence and leadership and has the call to bring the words of life to this world and to live the words of life, called to nourish this world. And verse 46 says it'll be good for the servant when his master returns to find him doing what he's supposed to. So when we do what we're supposed to, it's great. Of course it is. And I tell you the truth, he will put him in charge of all of his possessions. So we are in this building stage even now, evaluation stage. This is what our life is. To prove to Jesus through our lives that we are faithful, that we are on mission, that we love him through our actions, through our thoughts towards him, but through our actions to those that he loves. And when we do so, Jesus says, I want to give you more. I want to bring more into your life. I want to give you a future. And so be faithful to the mission I've given you and trust me in that. And trust me all the way till I return. And that's the awesome news. There's another side, and the flip side. Because the truth is that we are people who are being watched and evaluated. And Jesus is going to keep us accountable. And as it says, there is a wicked servant who says, my master is staying away a long time, and begins to beat his fellow servant and to eat and drink and drunkard. So here's an individual who started off as this wise and faithful servant, was given position of leadership and given position of mission as part of Jesus. And as Jesus left, he now turns his attention, and now instead of being on mission, he's beating his fellow servants and he's drinking with drunkards. It's like, how could that possibly be? Well, the first thing that I think is important is that this individual took their eyes off Jesus. When Jesus had gone, and when had been gone for quite a while, he now changes his behavior. And so in the prospect of being ready, one of the first things is to make sure we keep our eyes on the major task at hand, or the major person in our lives, which should be Christ. There's the old adage, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And when the boss is away, I don't know, the interesting stuff can take place, and people do games and stuff happens, and sometimes it's fun, sometimes whatever, sometimes it's not quite as focused. Same thing is true in our lives. And if Jesus was present, if he was with us physically, we would be on our best behavior. And when we're around followers of Jesus, we're often on our best behaviors. We're accountable to them. But Jesus judges us and our faith by our worst behavior, not just our best. Or according to this, it's both anyway. Okay? And here says, so that this wicked individual took their eyes off Jesus, and then number two, they lost sight of their mission. They forgot that they were to be people who've been delegated a responsibility, and as a steward of a great task and a great mission, and turned everything instead of what they're supposed to do in life, and it made it that life was all about them. There's something very dangerous when we're removed from our mission, because then we have the temptation to abuse our power and to seek self-gratification instead of being faithful to the call that Jesus has given to us as his followers. And in that losing sight of the mission, they lost sight of their equality. They beat their fellow servant. And I think they're called fellow servants in verse 49 for a purpose. Before it was the master put the servant in charge of the household, and now that household is being called fellow servants, which means you aren't given a mission and purpose in this life because you are better, more important, and special, and they're just the others. They're just the rest. You have been given work to do, mission to serve those that Jesus loves, who are as equally important to him and as equally valuable to him and as equally worthy of respect. And this wicked individual lost sight. He thought it was about him, and it wasn't about others, that he was better than others. He could beat, he could abuse, he could impose on other people were to serve him instead of him to serve the others. Then the second thing he went into, he drifted to self-gratification. He began eating and drinking with drunkards. And the start of eating and drinking, and that wasn't just, it's not about the drunkards, it's you start off with, I want to do what I want. Now, let's be clear here. There's nothing wrong with vacations. There's nothing wrong with pleasure. There's nothing wrong with leisure. There's nothing wrong with charging our batteries. What is wrong is entertainment for only entertainment's sake, only to be entertained. And if the goal of our leisure is only so that we would escape this world, now we're on the wrong track. The whole purpose is to recharge us, to experience joy, to experience pleasure, so that we can then bring more pleasure into this world, that we can bring more joy into this world, that we can bring more life into this world. That's why we need these incredible moments, not just so we can then have more incredible moments in our lives and be, it's like the guy, he went drinking and then he began drinking more and ended up, it kind of sounds like in a mess. And in our day right now, with this self-isolation going on, stuff being closed and much less to do out there, and even less gathering, I'm particularly worried because one of the most dangerous things is when nobody's looking. When we have lives and accountability, it's easy to be on mission, but on alone, it's easy to get distracted and to be self-focused and to focus on self-gratification. And so in this time, the words of Jesus is, I want you to be ready, and I want you to be ready by remaining focused on the mission, focusing on your calling. And so some of us will need to be more creative over these next few weeks. You'll need to make phone calls. Why don't you commit to write one letter? Like physical letter. You might have time to do that over the next little while. Go knock on the doors of your neighbors and ask if they need anything. Spend time in prayer. Read scriptures. Use it wisely, because Jesus says, when I return, I want my people to be ready. So what does it mean to be ready? It means to be a faithful servant who remains on mission. And so that's our call. Talk to you later. Talk to you tomorrow.